How to increase your capacity for action. If you want to expand your potential and therefore your capacity, you must first change your thinking. However, if you change only your thinking and you neglect to change your actions, you will fall far short of your potential. To start expanding your capacity, take the following 3 steps. 1. Stop doing only those things you have done before and start doing those things you could and should do. The first step toward success is becoming good at what you know how to do. But the more that you do what you know, the more you discover additional worthy things you could do. When this occurs, you have a decision to make. Will you continue doing what you have always done, or will you make the leap and try new things? Doing new things leads to innovation and new discoveries, and among those discoveries is the realization of things you should do on a consistent basis. If you do those, you will continue to grow and expand your potential. If you don't, you will plateau. My friend Kevin Hall describes this process of discovery and growth in Aspire when he writes about a discussion he had with one of his mentors, retired Professor Arthur Watkins. The gentleman was describing the growth of a tradesman from apprentice to master. Kevin recalls their conversation. A master didn't become a master overnight, he explained. There was a process. First, one must become an apprentice, then a journeyman, and finally a master. Apprentice, journeyman, master. These 3 words illustrate the importance of going through fundamental and necessary steps to acquire the kind of humility that is commensurate with true leadership. Arthur grew quite animated as if he were about to reveal an ancient truth. Do you know that apprentice means learner? He asked, then taught that the word comes from the French apprendre, which means to learn. In earlier times, apprentice was the name for someone who would select a trade, then find a master in his village to teach him the skills necessary for his chosen vocation. After learning all he could from the local master, the apprentice would then travel elsewhere to broaden his education. Launching forward on such a journey turned an apprentice into a journeyman. A journeyman would often travel long distances for the privilege of working under the master who could best help him further hone his craft. Over time, a journeyman could eventually become a master himself, and be in a position to start the cycle all over again. Point 4. The process of expanding one's potential is ongoing. It ebbs and flows. Opportunities come and go. The standards we must set for ourselves are constantly changing. What we could do changes as we develop. What we should do also evolves. We must leave behind some old things to take on new ones. It can be difficult work, but if we are willing, our lives are changed. In 1974 I became convinced that everything rises and falls on leadership. With that conviction came a passion for leading. I was fired up to learn how to lead effectively and then touch others. After several years I achieved a level of comfort in my ability to lead others and teach on the subject. I was enjoying what I did and seeing a degree of success. But then I began to see opportunities, other things I could do. I had the chance to reach a larger audience. I was at a decision point. Should I enjoy my life or attempt to expand it? Expansion would mean leaving my comfort zone. I would have to start a business to produce teaching materials. I would have to develop people who could work alongside me. I would have to learn to write books so I could reach people I'd never get to speak to. I would need to travel and learn the customs and cultures of those who lived in other countries to be able to communicate outside of the United States. All these changes took time. I made a lot of mistakes. Often I was in over my head. Most days I felt like Pablo Picasso when he said, "I am always doing that which I cannot do, in order to learn how to do it. I am always doing that which I cannot do, in order to learn how to do it." Pablo Picasso. The process of adaptation and expansion has continued for me and still does. More recently, I've had to learn how to use social media to expand my reach. I've started 2 companies. I've learned how to start a coaching initiative. And I'm continuing to learn how to connect with people in other countries around the globe. I never want to stop learning. I want to keep enlarging myself, expanding my potential, and improving my craft to my dying day. I want to live out the words of author and pastor Norman Vincent Peale, who said, Ask the God who made you to keep remaking you. 2. Stop doing what is expected and start doing more than is expected. We live in a culture that awards trophies to people for simply showing up, regardless of their contribution. Because of that, many people think they are doing well if they just do what is expected of them. I don't believe that helps people reach their potential or expand their capacity. To do that, a person has to do more. We live in a culture that awards trophies to people for simply showing up, regardless of their contribution. Former General Electric CEO Jack Welch calls this, getting out of the pile. To distinguish yourself, get noticed, and advance your career, you need to do and be more. You have to rise above average. You can do this by asking more of yourself than others ask, expecting more from yourself than others expect, believing more in yourself than others believe, doing more than others think you should have to do, giving more than others think you should give, and helping more than others think you should help. I like the way boxer Jack Johnson described it, going far beyond that call of duty, doing more than others expect. This is what excellence is all about. And it comes from striving, maintaining the highest standards, looking after the smallest detail, and going the extra mile. Excellence means doing your very best. In everything, in every way. Doing more than is expected does more than just separate you from your colleagues by earning you a reputation for performance. It also trains you to develop a habit for excellence. And that compounds over time. Continued excellence expands your capabilities and your potential. 3. Stop doing important things occasionally and start doing important things daily. Have you ever heard the expression, life is a great big canvas and you should throw all the paint on it that you can? I like the intent and exuberance of those words, but I don't think that advice is very good, unless you want a mess. A better thought is to make your life a masterpiece, which requires much thought, a clear idea, and selection when it comes to what paint you put on the canvas. How do you do that? By doing the important things every day. Writer and philosopher Henry David Thoreau wrote, "If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams, and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. He will pass an invisible boundary, new, universal, and more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around and within him, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings." I believe advancing confidently in the direction of one's dreams means doing what is important every day. To do what's not important every day does nothing for you. It merely uses up your time. To do the right thing only occasionally does not lead to consistent growth and the expansion of your life. Both components are necessary. Daily growth leads to personal expansion. Poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow compared his growth to that of an apple tree. He said, "The purpose of that apple tree is to grow a little new wood each year." That is what I plan to do. He also expressed a similar thought in one of his poems when he wrote, "Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end always, but to live that each tomorrow finds us further than today." If we do what's important every day, that can be true for us. Expanding his capacity and his impact. One of the greatest rewards I receive from writing and speaking is occasionally hearing from someone who has been positively impacted by my work. Recently I received a letter from Tim Williams, a sergeant who works for the county sheriff's office in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He wrote to tell me about the intentional growth path he has been taking and how it has expanded his capacity. Tim wrote, "As a part of my promotional testing process in 2005, I was required to read the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I had told myself that I would first read each of the books I was assigned, then reread each, and finally skim each with a highlighter to obtain possible test questions. My first read of the 21 laws did not leave me with a favorable opinion. My reread left me feeling better and agreeing with most of it. As I skimmed it, I came to the conclusion that I had been under a leadership rock for the better part of my life. Prior to being a sergeant with the sheriff's office, I had spent 20 years as a sergeant in the U.S. Army Special Forces. I didn't consider leadership a new concept." Tim went on to say that he continues to read books as part of his growth plan. They have changed his thinking and his actions. As a result, he has continued to advance within the organization. As I was promoted in rank, he wrote, I have also been able to institute several changes within my organization that I credit directly to what I have learned. I have been able to influence others and help many. Tim has adopted 2 practices as a result of what he's learned. The first is that he goes to where his employees are. Tim said, I spent my nights in the jail going from station to station visiting with deputies and just talking about anything. I listened, laughed, and just spent time hearing about their families and on some occasions their complaints. As a result, he started connecting with people. The second was writing personal notes to people to let them know that he cares about them and appreciates their work. He also became very intentional about noting in their evaluations the positive things his employees did, not just their deficiencies. The increase in morale was amazing, said Tim. Tim went on to say, at year's end I decided to take this one step further and send an email to all those assigned to my shift. I wanted it to be positive and transparent to all. I have made this an annual event and the results have been fantastic. My shift sick time usage dropped markedly. I've enclosed the first edition of what I call, Thanks, I Noticed. Shift 4, as we come to the end of the year, I wanted to take a moment and reflect on the things that all of you have done individually to make my life easier as a supervisor. Because of the competitive nature of this profession we share, I want all of you to collectively know what you have done for each other. As this year has passed, in some way each of you has contributed to the success that we all share. So for all the little things that you may have thought went unnoticed, please let me say, thank you, I noticed. Michael B. For giving up your 2 planned holidays so that we would have enough people to cover the shift, for volunteering for the paint detail on your days off, for the math project, for taking on the Academy Instructor Challenge, thank you, I noticed. Bruce B. For coming to work in pain unable to hear when you could have easily called off, for being my straight man in briefings and asking the questions others wanted to, for working through adversity, thank you, I noticed. Rosemary P. For reminding me what I was forgetting, for giving up your slot as part of my grand plan for Lane D. For always looking out for me, thank you, I noticed. Kelly S. For always being willing to change your assignment, for coming in when you could have easily called off, for helping us set the record for the most people ever to change a tire in the middle of the night, thank you, I noticed. John W. For being my first lead deputy as a deputy new to the shift and knowing well you'd take the heat for it, you did it with incredible character, thank you, I noticed. As a deputy sergeant and a retired Special Forces non-commissioned officer, Tim Williams could have said, I've been a leader for more than 20 years. I know what it is to lead, even when people's lives are on the line. I'm done learning. I will rely on my experience and finish out my career, and people better just do what I say. He could have, but he didn't. Instead, he was open to growth. He decided to continue to be a learner. And for that reason, his life, his influence, and his potential continued to expand. He lives the law of expansion. Growth always increases your capacity. That quality is present in all lifelong learners. And for that reason, their capacity keeps on expanding. It's said that when Pablo Casals was 95 years old, a young reporter asked, Mr. Casals, you are 95 and the greatest cellist that ever lived. Why do you still practice 6 hours a day, Mr. Casals' answer was telling. Because I think I'm making progress. You have the potential to keep making progress until the day you die, if you have the right attitude about growth. You need to believe what Rabbi Samuel M. Silver did. The greatest of all miracles, he said, is that we need not be tomorrow what we are today, but we can improve if we make use of the potentials implanted in us by God. The greatest of all miracles, he said, is that we need not be tomorrow what we are today, but we can improve if we make use of the potentials implanted in us by God. Samuel M. Silver. Applying the law of expansion to your life. 1. Have you made the mental transition from I can't, or can I, to how can I? Test yourself. Do some dreaming. Then ask yourself, if I knew I could not fail, what would I attempt? If I had no limitations, what would I like to do? If finances were not an issue, what would I be doing with my life? Take time and write your answers to those questions. Now, look at your answers. What is your gut level response to them? Do you look at them and think, that's far-fetched? This is impossible. How outlandish. Or do you look at them and think, how can I do that? What must I do to make this happen? What will I have to trade to make this transition? If it's the latter, you are mentally ready to expand your capacity. If it's the former, you still have work to do. Spend some time figuring out what's stopping you from believing you can make the changes necessary to expand your life. 2. Give yourself an effectiveness audit so you can be sure you are thinking what works. Instead of more work, go back through your calendar and to-do lists from the past 4 weeks. By the way, if you aren't using some kind of system to plan your days, that's the first step you need to take. Try to quantify the amount of time you spent on every action and activity during those 4 weeks. Then think about how much time you believe each activity should have taken, and give yourself an efficiency rating from A+ to F. Now sort all the activities into categories. Give yourself an effectiveness audit so you can be sure you are thinking what works. Instead of more work, where do you see patterns? What's working? What isn't working? What are you doing too much of, either because you're not being efficient enough or because the activity is off purpose? What changes do you need to make? Use the criteria of required, return, or reward to help you make judgments on what needs to change. 3. Do you have a plan and system to make sure you are doing what's important daily? First, define what is essential to you on a daily basis. In my book Today Matters, I wrote about my daily dozen. I include the list here for you as an idea starter. Choose and display the right attitudes. Determine and act on important priorities. Know and follow healthy guidelines. Communicate with and care for my family. Practice and develop good thinking. Make and keep proper commitments. Earn and properly manage finances. Deepen and live out my faith. Initiate and invest in solid relationships. Plan for and model generosity. Embrace and practice good values. Seek and experience improvements. Once you've created your own list, figure out how you will manage to follow through on each of those priorities every day so you stay on track and continue to expand your potential.